so as Jamie mentioned, I had the opportunity to work with the Governance and Accountability Institute, along with Lindsay Clark and Louis Coppola and the rest of the G&A team. So I'm just going to briefly go over some aspects of the report. This is the report itself. You can download it for free by going to the website listed here, ga-institute.com. And yeah, so I'm just going to go through and highlight a few aspects of it, which will kind of give you a nice intro to the panel discussion that will follow. So to start off, let's take a look at a number, 53%. So some people might look at this number and say, you know, it's significant. Some people might look at it and say it's not a significant percentage. So let me put it a different way. So let's say that 53% of the public is doing something that you are not doing. How many of you here, see by show of hands, how many of you here would take this into account, would take notice or might care? Okay, it's a good number. Now let's say that last year, 19% of the public was doing this thing. And now moving forward, it's grown from 19% to 53% this year, and it's continuing to grow. So with this being the case, now how many of you would take notice of this and would care? Okay, so it looks like a lot. So this is something that's happening right now, and I'll explain to you what's going on with it. Right now, 53% of the S&P 500 are releasing CSR reports. Now, just to sort of walk you through this diagram, you can see that on the side in red, these are companies on the S&P 500 that do not release CSR reports. And just for clarification, CSR is corporate social responsibility. It's sometimes used interchangeably with other terms, such as ESG, or just sustainability or responsibility. So you don't make it too confusing, I'll just stick with CSR for this presentation. If you look at the side, what we've done now is we've broken it down. So we look at the 53% that are reporting, and we were breaking it down by different types of reporting methods, primarily the GRI. GRI, it stands for the Global Reporting Initiative, and they pioneered the development of the world's most widely used sustainability reporting framework. And for that reason, it has broad credibility. So, you know, that's shown here in the graph, where 63% of those who are reporting have done so using the GRI framework. If you look below that, in blue, you'll see GRI referenced. These are companies that have released reports, and they use aspects of the GRI framework, but they don't really stick to it fully in the same way that the normal GRI reporters would do. And then if you look at the bottom, we have another significant percentage of non-GRI reporters. And so these are companies that are releasing reports, but they use a different framework that's not GRI. So to go into the report itself, there are four main areas that we talked about. One is we looked at financial performance. We also looked at indices, reputational lists and awards, as well as ratings and rankings. And we looked at, by going through all the companies of the S&P 500 and looking at those that did reports and did not release reports, we referenced it by using these four areas to see what kind of results we would come up with. So let's start with financial performance. So here, sorry, when I pasted it in, some of it got a little warped. It might be difficult to see. But basically what it's showing in the bottom, it's going from the beginning of 2007 up through part of 2012. What this is basically describing is if you invested $10,000 at the beginning of 2007, of where you would end up at this point in 2012. So if you look at the red line first, the red line is the S&P 500 EWI, or the Equal Weighted Index. And this is a popular benchmark that's used by investment professionals as a key measurement of return. So in this case, we used it as our benchmark as well, or our baseline. If you look at the lines above it, see there's the blue and the green. The green line is S&P 500 companies who have released CSR reports. And the blue line, those are Fortune 500 companies who have released reports. And what's interesting, what's quite clear, is that if you've invested at the beginning of 2007 in all these companies and going through 2012, you're going to end up with more, in this case, had you gone with those who have done reports. So moving on to the next section, to indices. I pulled out just one example. If you go and download the report later, you'll see that we have many examples in each category. This one is the Dow Jones Sustainability Index World. And what they do is they track the stock performance of the world's leading companies in terms of their economic, environmental, and social criteria. And so this is pretty self-explanatory what you're seeing here. It's a pretty overwhelming majority. You can see in the gray area where 98% are releasing reports, and of those, the majority are GRI reporters. So now going into the reputational lists and awards. Again, just pulling out one example from the report. This one is Ethisphere's 2012 World's Most Ethical Companies. The reason why I want to pull this out is because it looks at a few different areas. There are 5 core categories that it looks at in terms of who to include in this list. So the 5 that they include, one is ethics and compliance programs of the companies. The other is reputation, leadership, and innovation. Also governance, so corporate citizenship and responsibility, and last but not least, culture of ethics of these companies. And again, you can see that the majority of those included are the ones that release CSR reports. So now to look at one example from ratings and rankings. There's one thing that we looked at is we actually used data from Glassdoor.com, which is a website that has employee-generated data about companies, different aspects of companies. And we looked at 4 main areas. We looked at how employees viewed the overall company, how they viewed the company's culture, their perception of the CEO, and also overall employee satisfaction. And what we found here is also pretty incredible. So first, we're looking at this. These are the percentage of employees who would recommend the company they work for to a friend. Again, you can see GRI in the green is really way above all the others. And then when we look at these other 3 categories, it's pretty much the same across the board. Primarily with the last 2, with the CEO approval rating percentage, and the last one, the employee satisfaction. You'll see that those that release reports have scored higher in all of these areas, and those that did not release reports are the lowest. So going back to our original question, so does this matter? Does releasing reports matter? So as we've seen, companies that report on their sustainability strategies, they are more likely to be selected for a few things. They're more likely to be selected for key sustainability reputation lists. Also, more likely to be ranked higher by sustainability raters and rankers. They're also more likely to be selected for inclusion on leading sustainability indices. And in addition to that, if you go back to one of the first slides I showed, in addition, the study indicates that companies that are managing their sustainability issues, they actually tend to perform better over the long term in the markets. So going back to the first one, that 53%, we now see this is actually quite a significant number. 53% of the S&P 500 are releasing reports, and this is continuously growing. And also, this wasn't the focus of this report, but also 57% of the Fortune 500 companies are releasing reports. So this is something that's only growing. And what that means is that if you're on one of these lists and you're not reporting, you're now in the minority. And that minority is shrinking year by year. So with all this in mind, in my personal view, it's not so much the release of the CSR reports itself that's really the big thing here. It's more that by releasing the report, it forces the company to be mindful of these issues. And when you're mindful of the issues, it leads to other things. So back to this question again, does it matter? If you haven't figured out my answer yet, the answer is yes. Reporting on sustainability seems to increase the trust that investors, employees, and other stakeholders have on different companies. It also increases the transparency and the disclosure, which what it does is it builds better relationships with stakeholders that has the ability to impact the company's reputation, valuation, and also their right to operate. Also, through this engagement, the feedback gained through stakeholder engagement through this process can help the company gather valuable intelligence that might otherwise be missed. And these days, it's high quality management is using this data and using this intelligence to formulate the strategies for their companies. So in closing, just because certain matters such as CSR issues are difficult to measure, it does not mean that they don't have a profound impact on business. And it's those who realize this who will have a distinct advantage in the future global market.